All right, guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Brains and Building Hearts. This is James Rories. Today, I'm going to try my hand at hosting our conversation. We've got Brett. Brett, say hello.
What's up, fellas? Good to be back with you.
And we got Chris. So, partners in crime, all three of us. Breaking Brains, Building Hearts is all about a conversation among and between leaders. And today, the thought process is around change, right? What's changing in our lives? How are we approaching it? Today, more than ever, not only are we facing changes we've never seen before, but they're coming at a breakneck pace. So we're always on our toes. And it's not just the change.
Are you talking about your aging?
Say again, brother.
Are you talking about your aging?
That's always been with me, my man. It's also the hair that's kind of like receding on my forehead. But breakneck pace, and as leaders, we're dealing with it, our own world, which is tough because in many cases there's no lonelier job than the job of a leader, and we're also dealing with the people around us, our family, our friends, and our team members, and the folks that depend upon us every day. So I'm going to open this up to the group. Guys, when you think about the change that's affecting you today, what do you think about? Chris, how about you, man?
Well, I used to run, a bunch. Normal summer month for a few years was like 120 miles. Injured, so then didn't run a long run for 2 years. So I ran 6 miles a couple times in the last week. Well, no, 4.5, and then walked some, and then 5 and walked some. And oh my God, how much has changed. I was hurting. But the fact that I could even do it was amazing. I mean, just hurting in the sense of like my muscular support wasn't there in my legs. Right. I mean, my lungs had more than my legs. And I think there's like two components I've noticed for a lot of people that are trying to lead and make something better and improve it. It's their inspiration, their lung capacity. And it's the muscular structure. It's the infrastructure that supports the creative passions. And I feel like I'm in just a unique season right now where from a work standpoint, my lung capacity is greater than ever and the muscular structure is there. And I really feel on fire. So on fire that I wonder, am I in a movie where I'm having a break with reality and everybody else knows it but me? So I just keep trying to check things and test myself and be like, is this real? Am I crazy? So that's the weirdness in my world.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you're going through some change, but it's change that you've been through before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've gone through a couple of periods where I kind of go into this monk-like phase and create just wildly. And there's more keeps leading to more. So like this week I have some back-to-back meetings in a way that I probably haven't had in like 4 or 5 months. I've got some back-to-back meetings where I might be with people coaching with you guys, the different things we're moving forward. And I can tell things have changed contextually just because I've had 2 reach outs for speaking engagements, in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. And those had kind of slowed down, right? Normally slows down a little bit in the summer, but even with COVID. So I think people are starting to wake up. I just don't want to go back for a while to what I was doing because I got too much to make. And I know that I need to run with that while I can. Yeah.
Cool. So some things changing in your personal life and some things changing around you that are giving you some hope and building that fire, that excitement, that inspiration. Awesome. Brad, how about you, man?
Yeah, I think you talk about things changing at a breakneck pace. The other thing that I'm noticing is things are changing at different rates for everyone. And I'm speaking specifically in the sports world, as I'm talking to coaches for different sports and different teams around the country, everyone's in a different spot with what's going on with their team. And obviously all the normal rhythms are disrupted. The normal calendar is thrown out the window, and we're all like remaking it from scratch right now. And so it's fascinating to see all the different people. They could be coaching the same sport at the same level, but in like two completely different stages of, am I practicing yet? Are my athletes and students on campus yet? Will we play games? Will we not play games? Who's allowed in the gym and not in the gym? And it's wild to meet with all these different coaches and try to meet them at different spots of where they're at. Some are like in full practice mode, and others are don't even have their students on campus yet. And
right.
And so it's wild to see just everyone's like in different stages. No one's really synced up like we used to be, and it's a remarkable disruption for sure. But that's what I'm seeing most with the change that's happening around, is trying to connect with different people that are in different phases of it.
Sounds chaotic, man. Sounds like almost like the Wild West, right? Like there's all this opportunity out there, and then everybody's kind of going there for different reasons at different stages. And you've got to have this pioneer mentality almost, right? Because what was there last year, all the certainty and constructs and schedules are gone, and everybody's kind of making it up as they go. It sounds like.
Exactly. I mean, there's no blueprint for this. There's no nothing to follow. Coaches love stealing ideas and copying, and we go to clinics and we just do what the other guy did, but no one's done this before. So now we're all forced to be our own creative and our own, I guess our own leaders to kind of chart our own path, and it puts people in a unique position for sure. And I think about the leaders in this time. Coaches often complain about management or administration, but what a brutal time to be in a leadership role, because no decision you make is, and this is true for most people, but even now more than ever, no decisions you make is going to be accepted by everyone. And no decision you make can be proven like, hey, this has happened, this is how it's worked before, so it's the right decision now. Like, there's no blueprint to follow. There's no evidence behind what you're doing. Like, everyone's just trying to do the best they can and make the most of the situation. And leaders are getting crushed for it. And there's so many influences on on the decisions they're making and the reasons they're doing it. Man, it's tough. It's really challenging.
The
Chris,
game has gotten more complex. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I was going to say, Chris, I'm sure you got some things bubbling up based on comments.
Well, it is a fascinating, time. There's a way to think about evolutionary advantage, and we may have talked about this before. Like when you're in a high order situation, the evolutionary advantage goes to the detail-oriented person, because it's about the subtleties. When you're in a high chaos position, the evolutionary advantage goes to the person who is fast at pattern recognition, who can commit really quick, and I think for most of us, the place that we're living is an illusion of more order than is really there. So, you look at what it meant to run across the Serengeti, whatever, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, evolutionary history. Your life had these repetitive kind of rhythms, and then all of a sudden you find the rainforest, and then it's this whole new novel experience, and you're having to learn new dangerous plants and all these. Well, we look at the economy in this country, and there's a lot around this that it's been growing for a number of decades, but really about in the 70s, it stopped growing on its own and has been propped up by 4 or 5 major things, but it still created an illusion of growth. So we've perceived that there's much more order than there really is. And then the chaos has just broken through a little bit. And I have a lot of weird emotion around it. I don't want people to hurt, but I want enough chaos to break through to kind of break some of the broken structures of how we've organized things. And you can see about that. You can see that in education, healthcare, politics, whatever. But for individual leaders, like the advantage right now is to people that are recognizing patterns fast, moving fast, and then are able to adjust and adapt. It's not so much about the detail. The detail still matters, and I like personally cultivating an awareness that can do both fast. And I think that is possible. It's not natural or normal to the brain. And so what you're seeing is, like Brett, what you said, people are just getting crushed, because if you're a public leader right now, not only do you have a lot of novelty to lead in, look at the semantics and the way that you've got to orient in political movements. And,
Right.
because it's not the same thing it was even 2 months ago. I mean, right now you're seeing a lot of different cracks in the fissures of where kind of the world was coalescing, around some advancements. But now we're seeing some of the agenda that's tied up in that. So I find it personally an exciting, fascinating time. And I have to, put a caveat to that is like, I don't want people to suffer, but like, this is how things can really change. I also weirdly am better in this kind of environment than high order environments. But yet so much of what I've made changes in the last few months is building repetitive order into the structure of the business and what's happening on repeat. So that's been really interesting for me to zig when the kind of culture zags.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not easy to do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, because, when you've got chaos, you got opportunity, you also have pain. And I understand your point about not wishing that pain on other folks. It's interesting for me in the context of change. And this has become apparent as I've struggled just with the the newness of what's going on and the rate at which change is occurring for me and for my business. It's the sustained change, the sustained unknown. I'm the kind of guy that I see an opportunity, I take it, and I want to be done with it. I have an expectation that I'm going to start and stop relatively quickly. And the sustained struggle, the sustained unknown, and this is while you're investing, making change and not seeing the impact that you expect to be there. So, it's interesting during good times when all ships are being raised, there's an opportunity to take small steps and to see impact. In a time like this, if you don't choose right, or if you're just dealing with what everybody else is dealing with, where the tide is low, and now you're making change, and it takes even more effort to see that little bump or that little sign of encouragement. One, I think you got to retrain yourself to look for those small wins, not expect the big stuff like you used to be able to, but you've got to have the ability to sustain the effort, to sustain the enthusiasm, to sustain the focus. And that, for myself, I know it's something that I'm aware of, but I also see it in my clients, businesses that aren't at one of the extremes today, right? Raking in millions and millions, or closed and laying people off. When they're in the middle, dealing with the requirement to be sustained in their efforts to change and make something happen, it is exhausting for a lot of those folks. And how do you deal with that? And by the way, to the point we made earlier, Chris, this is change we haven't been through before. I've certainly been through healthy times and not healthy times, but when I start my healthy regiment, I have this vision of where I can go because I've been there before. Without that, especially in today's environment, without that North Star kind of keeping us focused and keeping us encouraged, the fact that we've been there before, we can do it again, that adds another layer of difficulty to sustaining the effort, sustaining the pressure, and keeping that enthusiasm going. I wonder if you guys experience that in your own lives, or if you see that with the folks you work with.
Yeah, one of the things I've been talking with some of our clients about with Champion Shift, and when they're going through our program, is our program is designed to be harder at the beginning. We sit with the problem and we let it stir a little bit. And I think we find, especially with ambitious people who are, go-getters and problem solvers and leaders, they see a problem and they want to get to the solution right away. Or they feel pain and they want to resolve the pain immediately. And I think the mistake we make sometimes is not sitting with the pain long enough to feel what's at the root of it or to understand what's really at the root at. And so instead we hustle to a solution and maybe it doesn't really get to the next clear understanding or the more clear understanding or better solution. And so I find that in my own life too. Like you go through a winter season and you're like, please let this be over. Like, all right, I've felt all the pain. I'm ready for the spring. But sometimes you got to sit there a little longer. And when you do, you come up with even a better solution. So I think we're seeing that a little bit on a global scale, on a national scale, but also in an individual scale. It's like, you got to sit here a little bit longer and dig deeper to find a better solution.
That makes me so happy to focus on, because like that has everything to do with what you're saying, Jimmy, everything to do with what I was saying about where culture's really confused. It also makes me think about sitting in your underwear. So I'll hit diversity, mission, and underwear. Like right now, the culture's like, we got to be diverse, we got to be diverse, we got to be diverse. Diverse is fruit from a root that values humans, that is ego-free enough to not have to have their own echo chamber. And so it applies to race, it applies to gender, it applies to creed, it applies to, all of these things. But that's why I'm like, I see so many people rushing to something that is not going to stick or last. And then it's so many status games for corporate leaders to check boxes on things.
Right.
Rather than it being like, no, I really do want to hear. I want to hear from other perspectives. I mean, that's what healthy community does. And what you're saying, Brett, is like, because people don't sit with the problem long enough, we rush into these reactive things that you just know aren't gonna stick. And that doesn't mean I'm pessimistic. It means I'm so optimistic about how human transformation works, but I'm going to be honest about what doesn't work, and externally forced change doesn't work. And that fits with everything we're talking about with, and I love the way you framed it, Jimmy, the middle that so many businesses are in. Some are raking it in and there's hype. Some are just getting crushed and there's disillusionment, but there's this like simmering middle where a lot are. And I use an analogy, and have for the last couple of years. I don't remember where I got it. That helps me a ton, because as a leader, you have to be in like 3 different places on the ship. And you made me think of this when you talked about the tide. You got to be up in the crow's nest with the big vision. You got to be at the sails, adjusting quarterly strategy, and you're at the wheel, keeping it out of the rocks, right. The daily cash flow of it all. And, I made a wrong move with the sails, adjusting the sails about 1.5 years ago. The vision was still there, but the sails were off. And interestingly enough, because I'm a dad, the sails were higher when I adjusted the sales incorrectly. In the short term, the SALES were good, and I was drawn into this direction that actually wasn't the best long-term direction and wasn't the best authentic expression of where I wanted to actually go. And so COVID has surfaced a lot of those changes. But what it's meant is investing in the business over the last 4 or 5 months in a way that I never have financially, at the level I never have, and less results yet.
Yeah.
So you sit in the tension of that. But what makes me unstoppable is I'm not doing the mission to get something, but to give something. I mean, I want to get something. I want to know impact. I want to know substantial income. Both of those, I want to have fun. But the main motivation is to give something. I have something to give.
So let's talk about that, guys. So
and don't forget about underwear. We'll come back to that.
What about the underwear?
Let's take a break. Show us your underwear, Chris.
No, it's okay. No.
But let's talk about this for a second, because I love the perspective that all 3 of us bring. So my 28 years has been in sales, high growth environments, and leading those high growth environments. But from a sales perspective, top line revenue perspective, Brett, your focus is NBA basketball coaching. Your new book is about coaching and the mindset and that you and Chris have put together. And Chris, your focus is, I know that people listening right now really don't know what your focus is, but it's conceptual, ethereal. It's out there, but you're really rooted in, core mystical as well as practical, thoughts around who we are as human beings. And you really take us to the core of who we are and force us to think differently. So we all come to this challenge differently. And you said something, Chris, that I think is going to be inspirational for folks. But in my world, my clients want me to take that inspiration and make it practical, right? So how do we take a concept like I'm here to give, right? So in the sales world, we would call that a customer-centric mindset where I am here to serve the customer, but I can't lose sight of the fact that I serve myself and my business as well. So I have to have a shared goal for growth so that the service that I provide is in service of that goal as well. So I have to create a construct that allows me to give, but also to give in a way that allows us all to grow through that process. And so we have to use that to drive revenue for an organization that has bills to pay, people to employ, and impact to deliver to the world, right? So when you lay something like, I'm here, I'm driven to give, but then you also talk about the fact that you have to receive. How do you help people? And I'd love to hear, Brett, from you as well, because obviously sports competition, there's got to be that give and get as well in that world. How do you help people normalize that, think about that in a way that's practical, that they can actually go apply in the real world?
Rock it out, Brett, if you want.
Go for it.
I'll tag team you. No, well, if I go first, it would just be emphasizing. It comes down to motive. I mean, a salesperson that is insecure is going to manipulate to get a sale and not think about the long term, care of that customer. And it's just a bad strategy. But it also doesn't feel good if you value what it means to be a good human. Now, you could want to play the long-term game in sales and take care of the customer, but your motive is still for your own self-interest. And you can't ever know it perfectly, but even just 51%, it's more to make you feel good or powerful or effective or impactful, whatever, even,
right. And if it's too much, and if I serve too much, Chris, I can be over empathetic and it can cost me too much and it can actually be to my detriment, right?
Absolutely. Well, yes, in the sense of like a negative, codependent relationship. But that's why, and you could frame all of this in terms of personal relationships to like get a really concrete example of it. If it's all give, all empathy, I'm a doormat for you, I don't ever close the sale, whatever, then yeah, but that is also ego, because it's the hiding from the truth of who you are, the power and the strength. And so a healthy person who doesn't have to prove or hide anything, who knows who they are, shows up in relationships in healthy ways. They have healthy boundaries. They know how to bring their passion and enthusiasm in that sales process and go, I've heard your story. We've got to do this deal. You're going to be better for it. I'm helping you, or if they're a marketer, it's like, I'm not telling people about what I'm doing. I'm denying them the opportunity to be impacted by it. But the way that I go about sharing it with people, it's this sweet spot where I'm not aggressively trying to control the conversation. I'm not hiding from the strength and beauty and power of what can happen here. I'm here in a truthful, authentic way to give. And yes, I want to get a sale. Yes, I want to close. Yes, I want to win. I don't need my ego to be comforted through the way that I hid from the process and the way that I judge others that are too aggressive. I don't need my ego to be comforted from the way that I'm too aggressive and powering up and trying to control so I can feel like an assertive alpha winning. I just show up as me. That's what makes me unstoppable. That's what makes anybody unstoppable, because there's a flow through. And, that's the real work. The real work is the internal, because then that external happens as a result of it. Brett, what would you maybe?
Yeah, that's great. I think in the athletic world, you hear a lot about, he plays with a chip on his shoulder, players are motivated by a chip on their shoulder, and it's celebrated because those players see some success, at least in the short term. What they're missing, or what we're missing when we see it, is that they are playing to get validated. They're expecting the performance or the results of their performance to give them some sort of validation. So when they're playing with this chip on their shoulder, I'm out there to go take from the game. I expect to perform a certain way, to have a certain number of touches, score enough points for you guys to validate me, that I am good enough. I do belong. I'm better than everyone else. All that gets distracted by comparison, and it sets you up for taking from the game rather than show up and give what you have. The players who have this chip on their shoulder are constantly trying to force their will onto the situation rather than cooperate with what's unfolding. These are the players who are going to call off the set, call off the game plan, and just have it all center around me.
Right.
I'm going to take the shot. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to make sure I'm the reason that we succeeded. And that's showing up to take. And as Chris said, it comes out of an unhealthy motive. It's this, where you're looking for validation rather than coming to the game or the competition or the sale, whatever it is, that I am validated already. I belong already, regardless of the results, regardless of my performance.
Right.
And that just opens you up to a presence that says, all right, I'm going to show up and give whatever I have, and whatever the moment needs, I'm going to give that, even if that means less of me and more of a teammate.
So the give you're talking about, Brett, is giving to the team. Is it about me or is it about the team? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, Chris, you were talking holistically about giving to build other human beings. It's still the same context. Is it all about me, or is it about we or us? Yeah. How we can grow versus just how I can be satisfied or how I can be rewarded for the effort.
And you're only going to get to the healthy we with healthy me's. That's why it's so bass-ackwards when people emphasize in training and team development, it's we over me. Well, a group of insecure me's make a whack we. And so
we call that a gang, man. We call that.
Yes.
And we don't call that a team. We call that a gang.
And for me, it's like, somebody in sales that's a healthy me wants to partnership with marketing and not compete with marketing. And, all the territorial battles I know you've seen. And for people that are watching that are like, but yeah, man, it's that chip that, man, gets you out and gets you that. The chip can get you to a pro level. You will not become a master with a chip on your shoulder. You can play a good game, but like Brett can tell us from the Jordan documentary more than I can, you don't start directing the energy of the game at the level that Jordan did as a pro, because that chip distracts you internally. You're not at that master level. And, for me, there's plenty of growth to happen in getting to that pro level. It's plenty of growth. It's great. It got you here. But I'm just really obsessed with how that personal transformation takes somebody to the highest expressed self that they can be. And that's where the fun and the learning is at its peak. There's no phoning that in.
I would clarify too that it's just because you're not making it about you, or you're not seeking to get validation from this, doesn't mean you never own the spotlight. Right. There are times where what the moment needs is exactly what you have, And the best thing for our team is for you to show up big and bring it.
I love
I use this in the book, but you've seen the movie Hoosiers. You probably haven't, Chris, but everyone else in the world has seen the movie Hoosiers.
Actually, I have seen Hoosiers.
There
Is
you
that about where the place you get the wings? No, I'm kidding.
That joke, I thought you might have been serious.
The story, it's the drunk dad.
Yeah, that's part of the story. Yeah, you're missing the point here. But it's the end of the game, right? The coach Hickory is ready to got the ball with a chance to win the state title, and the coach uses Jimmy Chitwood, their best player, as a decoy, and all the players are like, "You can't be serious right now." Jimmy looks at everyone. He says it. He said, "I'll make it, coach." It's like, it's not a ego-driven thing. It's not I need to be validated. Give me the last shot so I can be celebrated as a hero. It's like, I know what I bring to the table, and what this moment needs is exactly what I have. So let me go. Let me do it. So just because you're showing up to give, you're serving the team, doesn't mean you never have a chance to own the spotlight.
Right.
You do both. It's share the spotlight and own the spotlight.
Love it. I mean, that's where, for me, it's like, if you're secure in who you are, your ego isn't on the line, and you don't always have to, make the moment about you, not showing up too big, not showing up too small. Then you get to be in a place where you are courageous and you'll inspire people. You'll inspire people with your wins, and then you also relax them. You relax them with your struggles.
Right.
And I think for leaders, they tend to vacillate on, they're too self-depreciating or they're too bloated. And, we know that. We sniff that out in a meeting in 0.026 seconds, and we form judgments. Even if people don't have awareness on what's happening, they don't connect to the initiative that's being laid out. They don't, they're not emboldened to add their thought or opinion on how to make something better. Instead, at an evolutionary level, we've just learned to interpret all this really fast. We're like, I don't really like that guy. I don't like his shirt. And you start getting distracted mentally with all of these things that are confirming a narrative that you're reading into this situation, because that leader isn't showing up as effective as possible.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think what this is making me think about is, as a leader, if I was listening to this, the question is, okay, what can I do to encourage this? And, one example that comes right from sports, comes from life, the media, how the media treats sports, how we treat winners in sales, on sales teams within businesses. This idea of celebrating the score, celebrating the win, and not recognizing the work that went into it, right? So where do we focus our reward system, right? Does the reward system feed the ego that's unhealthy, or does it feed the thought process that we want to encourage in our folks? And I know it goes to raising two girls. One is a sophomore in college, one's a sophomore in high school. I know what happens when you reward kids for great grades, right? They focus on the grade and they do everything they can to get that grade, and they lose sight of the work required to get there. But if you celebrate the work that they did to get that great grade, it's much less about the number or the letter, and much more about figuring out how to do better work. So their focus is healthy versus unhealthy. Same thing in sales, I'm sure. Same thing in sports. You've got athletes, dealing with that internal struggle all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to be rewarded or pummeled in the press for what we were able to accomplish, and nobody knows the effort and the sweat that went into it. And so that just means, as an athlete, you've got to be that much more secure and focused and settled in on what you know to be important, so you can allow all the other stuff that would infect your ego and infect your work ethic to kind of just pass you by.
Yeah, you had talked. You set it up about like what do leaders, how do they cultivate this mindset or this environment? And I think about it like this: if I walked into a basketball gym and everyone started saying, "Hey, there's the best shooter in the gym," if anybody would challenge me, I would feel pressure that I could not lose. If I lose, then my marker as the best shooter in the gym would be threatened. And so now I spend all my time protecting that, right? I've got this identity or this label built around I have to be the best shooter. The best shooter never loses, so I'm not going to put myself in any position where I'll lose.
Right, exactly.
Same with the student, right? Hey, exactly. That was awesome. You got an A. Well, now all I've heard is I'm only awesome if I get A's. Right. So I'm going to figure out every way possible to make sure I get A's. That's not take harder classes. That's not take harder tests. It's cheat on the tests. Whatever I got to do to get an A, so everyone thinks I'm awesome.
Avoid risk. Avoid trying new things.
Yeah. And this actually informs us, right? We don't grow from that. We grow from putting ourselves in places where we don't have it figured out yet, or we need to be challenged. We stretch the edge of our abilities, get a few B's and C's just to push ourselves and learn where we can grow more. And so as a leader or as a coach, what you said, Jimmy, being able to affirm personhood, who you are, is you're accepted. You belong on this team. We're happy to have you. We're better with you on it because of the work you bring, the resilience you bring, the problem-solving skills you bring, all the process-oriented attributes you bring to what makes our team better and grow.
Mm. It's the process mindset. If only there was a book that talked about it. But like this whole thing, Bill Walsh, he wrote a book, The Score Takes Care of Itself.
Right.
How about that, Paul? Which is just the process mindset. And, the lion in me, if I use Nietzsche's Camel Lion Child, the lion in me is so pissed off at education for the way that it measures. I mean, having a 14, 16, and soon to be 18-year-old and their friends that are now doing school from home and how they can just cheat and use everything online.
Right.
Because it's so dumb. It measures perfection, not progression. And the child in me goes, well, that's okay because it'll set them up to really appreciate the value shift that they could have at some point in life when they go, you know what? Like all of school should be open book and critical thinking. Very few memorization techniques should be endorsed. When we grew up in an era of school where it was like, pick C,
right.
When you don't know, pick C. And it's so sad to see that not engaged. I love the result of the work, but if I don't love the process of the work more, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, then I am showing up to get, not give. If I love the process more, the giving is a joy. The result does take care of itself.
That's a great insight. And when you think about this in an organization, like a business, the way you train people to behave and to approach their work affects the culture that you create. Culture is not a top-down emphasis. It's not a top-down creation. It's a bottom-up creation based on the way your people actually behave and the way you motivate them. In a sales environment where there can be an enormous amount of pressure on a sales team to drive top-line growth, regardless of what's happening in the marketplace, right? Where do you focus your team? And I think one of the things, to your point, Chris, that we do well is instead of being the kind of sales leader that says, as long as you hit your number, I don't care what you do. Go get them, Tiger, right? And I'm just going to keep judging you against whether you hit your number, go figure it out. And you've got 40, 50, 100, or 1,000 people just doing their own thing. Imagine, following their ego, doing their own thing. Imagine having them focus on the goal, the plan, and the scorecard, and then leveraging the scorecard to improve the plan. and to level up their goals. Imagine a cyclical approach to have and a balanced attention on goal, plan, scorecard, and using the scorecard to improve the plan and the execution and to advance goals. Having a balanced approach now allows us to have a more holistic view of what it means to be successful. And I think, to your point, Chris, although I wouldn't have used those words, but I will now, having that process mindset, right? We can leverage the GPS to get us there and to balance our attention. So now we can, yes, be focused on the outcome, but not look at the outcome as a win-loss or a zero-sum game, as we've talked about in the past. But I now look at it as information that can help me think about where I can adjust, what levers I can move to improve. And so it's not about being lauded as a winner or a loser or rejected as a loser. It's about where can I improve? And all of a sudden now we're all focused on getting better. And we're all celebrating the wins and the losses for their contribution to us getting better, improving, advancing, moving things forward.
Right on. It's like the person that's super buffed up that doesn't understand, what Brett talks about in the book with process mindset. They can bench a huge amount of weight, but they can't throw a baseball because their muscular structure is deformed. And there's not the process mindset, that's the overflow of that answer. But this is hard work. It's not easy to keep coming back to this. Yeah. It's not easy. And so that's why sometimes as a dad of a 14, 16, soon to be 18-year-old, sometimes I just got to sit on the couch in my underwear and go, I don't have any time, energy, nothing's left over.
And tell terrible dad jokes. But I think it's important to mention is that 3 girls too. So you can be. Yeah.
It's not really my underwear, but points for me. Give me validation for pulling it back around to that.
Impressive, but now scarred seeing you laying this image in my head of you laying on the couch in tidy whities.
Too funny. Yeah, only boxers here.
Well, it's been a great conversation, guys. Before we wrap, I wonder if there's any, final thoughts or takeaways that you'd encourage any listener to take with them.
Yeah, I'll leave it with this. My favorite idea, I guess, is be more concerned with who you are becoming than what you achieve. And life is more about growing and experiencing than accomplishing and conquering. And with that sort of mindset, I think your ends are boundless.
Wow.
I'll Corona elbow bump that. It's so good. Nothing to add.
I feel overwhelmed as well, man. I love it. I couldn't have said any better myself. Outstanding. All right. That's another episode of Breaking Brains, Building Hearts. We know change is a constant. We know change is hard, and that's why we're here. Join us again every week as we talk about topics around change and how you as a leader can help yourself and the people around you think differently and then inspire themselves and others to take that leap toward change and make something happen. Thanks for joining us. All right. Woo!